Welcome back, everybody. It's week 11 of fantasy football. We have a lot of matchups to get through in this video. I'm going to try to do it as quick as possible for you guys. Starting things off, we have the Saints and Colts both on bye this week. Make sure you take all those players out of your lineups. I listed the key ones right here. If you're new to the channel, in these start and sit videos, I use Vegas Sportsbooks to show you guys what the implied team totals are, basically how many points combined are both these teams going to have, and that'll let you know if it's going to be a high or low scoring game. And on top of that, I also go over the spread. The spread is basically which team is going to win and by how much, and that's going to help us determine if a team's going to be very pass heavy, like Team A in this example, or if Team B, who's projected to win, is going to be pass heavy to start, and then move to the run game to kind of slow things down and maintain their lead and burn clock. Moving into the first matchup, we have a Thursday night game between the Jets and the New England Patriots. Jets, who gave up a lot of their defense, is going to make things very easy for the Patriots, and that's probably why they're expected to win by 12.5 points. They're one of the best teams in football right now. Drake May, QB1 overall in fantasy and leading the MVP race right now. He's going to be a must-start for us. Trevion Henderson is going to be a must-start for us as well. Coach said he was going to get a large workload this week, and Ramondre Stevenson, who's currently questionable, could miss another week. So Trevion Henderson, 28 points last week, 12 or so the point week before. Start him. Savon Diggs, must start for us this week, and Kayshon Boutte going to be a flex start for us. Sit Hunter Henry. Jets playing against a very good Patriots defense. You're going to be sitting Justin Fields, less than, I think, 70 passing yards last week. Sit him. Breece Hall did have 19 points last week in PPR formats with a 40-yard reception on 3 catches. That 40-yard receiving touchdown outside of that would have only been 9 points, and he's playing against a very similar defense who's honestly probably better than the Cleveland Browns defense. I don't expect anybody on the Jets to be able to perform against this amazing New England defense. Moving into our next matchup, we have a very early game on Sunday morning. It's going to be the Dolphins versus the Commanders. 47.5 is the implied team total. High-scoring game. Miami barely expected to win by a little under a field goal. Miami is going to be very pass-heavy in this game against a weak Washington secondary, and the Commanders are going to be very pass-heavy to try to beat the Miami Dolphins. Marcus Mariota is going to be the starting quarterback, with Jayden Daniels still being out with a left arm injury. Don't start anybody on the running back room for the Commanders, as you never know which one's going to be the main running back. 1 week Bill's the starter, 1 week Jeremy McNichols is the starter, 1 week somebody else is the starter. Even though it's a Miami defense, don't start anybody. Deebo Samuel is a must-start this week, especially with Terry McLaurin currently being questionable and possibly missing this game. And Zach Ertz is also going to be a must-start regardless of Terry McLaurin's status, because tight ends are always very good safety blankets to their quarterbacks, and Marcus Mariota, I think this is his first start this year. Start Devon Achane every single week and start Jalen Waddle. He's emerging as not only the wide receiver 1 for this offense for the foreseeable future, but also a wide receiver 1 in fantasy with both volume, touchdown upside, and his ability to produce when he gets the opportunities. So start those two. I'd sit everybody else on Miami because there's better options, as you'll see later in this video. Next matchup, first noon game on this video, we have the Carolina Panthers versus the Atlanta Falcons. Both teams have a fairly good defense, probably why the implied team total so low at 42.5. Atlanta's expected to win by 3.5 points. Panthers are going to be very run-heavy in this game. Falcons are also going to be very run-heavy in this game, as they both have very good secondaries. Bryce Young is going to be a sit this week, along with Michael Penix. Both of these young quarterbacks have not been able to produce fantasy-wise, but their surrounding cast has been. Rico Dowdle, questionable right now. If he does play, you're going to be starting him. If he is out, you're going to be starting Chuba Hubbard. In the scenario you're seeing right here, it's Rico being healthy and Chuba also being healthy, so you're going to be starting Chuba. Tet McMillan is usually a must start, but because of the good secondary he's going to be going against, he's going to be a flex start. Wide receivers over the last few games against the Falcons have not been able to produce as high as we would have liked, so he's only going to be a flex start for me and sit the rest. Bijan Robinson start every single week. Tyler Algier, in games where the Atlanta Falcons have led, has seen double-digit carries, and that's happened 5 times this year. Last game, he had 17 points off of 2 vultured touchdowns. I think he's a flex start this week. I'm personally flexing him in one of my leagues this week, and Drake London, always a must start, being the wide receiver 1 for the team. And last 2 games having over 20 points, with one of them being almost a 40 bomb. Darnell Mooney going to be a sit, and Kyle Pitts is going to be a start because last week, even on only 4 targets, Juwan Johnson had 4 catches for almost 20 fantasy points. So Kyle Pitts, I can see doing the same thing against a defense that isn't really good against the tight end position. Next matchup, we have the Bills versus the Buccaneers. Very fun matchup. 48.5 is the implied team total. Buffalo expected to win by 5.5 points. Bills are going to be very run heavy, and Buccaneers are going to try everything to stay in this game. Bills are going to be starting Josh Allen, James Cook, and Khalil Shakir. If Khalil Shakir plays, you're starting him. If he doesn't, and Dalton Kincaid is out, I think Keon Coleman is the next best bet, who saw 8 targets last week. Sit Keon Coleman and start Khalil Shakir if Khalil Shakir plays. On the Buccaneers side, start Baker Mayfield. Bucky Irving still on IR, but has been seen at practice as of the time of recording this video on Wednesday. Rashad White is going to be a start for us this week against this weak Bills run defense. Tez Johnson's going to be a flex start. He's emerging as a very good option. Emeka Egbuka, obviously wide receiver 1 for this team, and in fantasy, start him. And then Cade Otton's been seeing a lot of volume and fantasy production, so you're going to be starting him this week as well. In the next matchup, we have the Chargers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. 43.5 is the implied team total. Fairly medium scoring game. Chargers expected to win by a field goal. And they're going to be very pass heavy against this Jacksonville Jaguars defense that doesn't have Travis Hunter anymore and has been lacking in the secondary. Justin Herbert's going to be a must start. Kamani Vidal, who's on 93% of the snap share, is also going to be a must start. You're going to be must starting pretty much all of the Chargers outside of Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen only saw 2 catches last week because that's all he needed to break the Chargers record. One of them was the most schemed up reception you could possibly get, just dropping it into his lap. He's going to be a flex start this week. He's been losing some snap share to Trey Harris, and I wouldn't be surprised if I start showing Trey Harris on this diagram by the end of the season. Ladd McConkey is questionable. They're monitoring his ankle. Monitor that for your lineups as well. I think he's going to be fine. Knock on wood. Rondé Gatson is now healthy. His bruised thigh is fine now, so you can start him. Trevor Lawrence is going to be a sit for us this week. Travis Etienne going to be a start. Parker Washington is a wide receiver, not a running back. Going to be starting him this week. Brian Thomas questionable to play this week instead of being out. Monitor his health. I think he's still only a flex start just because he's been hit or miss for every other game for us this year. Jacoby Myers, even in his first game, saw a lot of usage and a lot of production compared to the other wide receivers in this room. Going to be a flex start for us. And then Brenton Strange is going to be a must start if he plays. If he doesn't play, obviously sit. But he's looking to come back from IR this week, or at least soon. Next matchup we have is the Vikings versus the division rival Bears. In every single game that J.J. McCarthy has started outside of his second week, basically just a sample size of 3, he's had at least 16 fantasy points. And the 16 fantasy point minimum he had was last week when everybody said he looked awful. Needless to say, Vikings quarterbacks are always able to get their fantasy points. You can even see that with Carson Wentz. But J.J. McCarthy actually has rushing upside. I think he had like 40 or 50 rushing yards last game. So he's got that rushing floor. You're going to be starting him this week. Aaron Jones is the must start over Jordan Mason now that he's back. Justin Jefferson to start every single week. And then Jordan Addison against this Chicago Bears secondary is going to be a must start as well. And then I'm going to be sitting TJ Hawkinson just because he doesn't have that connection with JJ McCarthy yet. Vikings only expected to win by 3 in a high scoring game, so I expect the Bears to be able to score. I don't know who's going to score. Caleb Williams, Kyle Monangai, and Colson Loveland are all going to be sits. I do have a lot of faith in this Vikings defense to turn things around. They've been able to put pressure on Caleb Williams in the past and prevent him from being able to do anything. The split that we're seeing between Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift is difficult to choose which one to start or give priority to. Priority is probably going to go to DeAndre Swift, so he's going to be a flex start. DJ Moore is going to be a flex start for me because I have more faith in Rome Odunze in this type of matchup. And so Rome Odunze is going to be the must start for me. In the Green Bay Packers versus New York Giants game, we have a 43.5 implied team total. Green Bay expected to win by a touchdown, so when they get ahead, they're going to be very run heavy. Start Josh Jacobs, never start Jordan Love for the rest of the year. Matthew Golden's questionable. You're going to be sitting him regardless. Romeo Doubs questionable. If you play, start him. If not, Christian Watson is then elevated to a must start over his current flex rating. And Luke Musgrave would also be considered a must start if Romeo Doubs were to miss. But right now he's going to be a sit for me. New York Giants, kind of a joke, but it'd be fun to start Jameson Winston just because he does have the ability to throw crazy amount of yards, crazy amount of touchdowns, crazy amount of picks. I love the joke where he passes for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 picks every single time he starts. He's going to be throwing the ball to Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson, flex start, though, just because it is Jameson Winston. And Theo Johnson has actually seen a lot of production. I know it's a different quarterback, but quarterbacks tend to rely on their tight ends when they're coming into a new role like Jameis is. And with how fast the Packers are able to get to the quarterback, they're going to have to rely on those shorter passes where Theo Johnson comes in. So he's going to be a must start for me this week. In the next matchup, we have a Pittsburgh versus Bengals game. 48.5 the implied team total. Pittsburgh's expected to win by 5.5 points. Steelers are going to be able to do everything, I think, against this weak Bengals defense. The Bengals are going to be very pass heavy, trying to beat the Steelers in this game. Jaylen Warren must start. He's got a very easy running back schedule rest of season. DK Metcalf looking to rebound after last week's poor performance. And Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, you can't really flex a tight end. And if you can, there's probably better options. But mild starts if you have no other option at tight end just because it is the Cincinnati Bengals. Kenneth Gainwell has some flex upside, probably only in 12-man leagues. And when you go over to the Bengals side, start everybody in green. Joe Flacco's been able to get his fantasy points week in, week out. Chase Brown saw 14 targets last week. Wasn't too efficient, but I think he's going to be able to have a good game this week, especially if they're pass heavy again. Jamar Chase, always a must start, and T. Higgins is also one of those rare wide receiver 1 fantasy producers as the wide receiver 2 on the team. Sit everybody else on the team. Noah Fant could be elevated to a must start in future weeks if he's able to continue to do what he's done over the last few weeks. So monitor him, but sit him this week. Moving into a very low-scoring game of the week. 37.5 is the implied team total between the Texans and Titans. Houston's expected to win by 6.5 points. Both teams are going to be very run-heavy. Houston's going to be very run-heavy because they're going to have the lead, and Titans are going to be very run-heavy because the Texans have a very good secondary. So with a run-heavy scheme, Woody Marks is going to be a must-start, being the RB1 now for the Texans. CJ Stroud is questionable. If he does play, it's going to hurt Nico Collins, I think, a little bit more than the backup that was doing for Nico. Nico's performing way better with the backup, is all I'm trying to say. Christian Kirk, flex start, just because he does have that volume with CJ Stroud. If CJ Stroud were to start, and Dalton Schultz has actually been seeing a lot of volume as well in recent weeks and is a favorite target for CJ Stroud. Sit everybody on the Titans. I'm not going to get too into it. Defense is too good for Houston. Next matchup, we have the Cardinals versus the 49ers. Jacoby Brissett in a very high-scoring game, and even regardless, has been a very good fantasy option. He's averaged, I think, between 19 and 21 fantasy points per start. Just been a phenomenal quarterback. Mario DiMercato is going to be a must-start for me with the injured running back room. Trey Benson not back yet. Bam Knight questionable, possibly missing this game. Mario DiMercato, Michael Carter are going to be the 2 running backs. I'm putting my money on Mario DiMercato to be the main back, probably having an 89% workload. Marvin Harrison is out. Take him out of your lineups. He is not playing this week. Michael Wilson will take over majority of that receiving work that Marvin Harrison was getting. Marvin Harrison coming off 10 and 12 targets. I expect those to be split between Michael Wilson and Trey McBride. Trey McBride projected 20 fantasy points already, and Michael Wilson only projected 10 right now. I can see that moving up to 12 as we get closer to game time. Michael Wilson also has had at least 4 targets over the last 6 games, with 7 targets last game. So that's a very safe floor if you're still on the edge about starting him, but he's still a must start for me as well. San Francisco 49ers, probably sit Brock Purdy. He's been out a long time. I know he's projected 20 fantasy points, but I'm going to be sitting him, start Christian McCaffrey every single week. You're going to be starting George Kittle every single week. He's shown that he's back to being George Kittle. He had 25 fantasy points last week. Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall are both flex starts. Monitor Ricky Pearsall because he is still questionable. And we're going to move into the next matchup. Very good defenses between the Seattle Seahawks and Los Angeles Rams. Rams have a very good run defense. Seahawks like to run the ball. Seahawks, very good pass defense. Rams like to pass the ball. So very interesting matchup here. Both are very good at what they do. Sam Darnold going to be a sit and actually sit everybody on the Seahawks except for Jackson Smith and Jigba. You're going to be starting him every single week regardless of matchup. Rams expected to win by 3 points, so they're going to be very run heavy once they get the lead. Matthew Stafford going to be a must start, being able to pass the ball to Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams questionable. He is expected to play this week, so I took that questionable tag off. And then Kyron Williams going to be leaned on heavily in this game. Seahawks do have a good run defense as well as the pass defense, so maybe temper expectations, but he's been able to do well. Watch the Blake Corum workload. I think last few games he's been getting as many as 13 carries opposed to Kyron, so could possibly be looking at a split backfield, but for the time being, start Kyron Williams every single week. Next matchup, we have the Baltimore Ravens versus Cleveland Browns. Probably going to be an ugly game. Ravens like to run the ball. Browns like to not let other teams run the ball. So Derrick Henry should not have the questionable tag. Probably be questionable about whether or not you're going to start or flex him. I have him personally as a flex start just because Browns have been able to limit and contain every single running back that's not a receiving back, and that is exactly what Derrick Henry is. Lamar Jackson going to be a must start every time he's on the field, and Zay Flowers is going to be a must start as well, being the wide receiver when the Ravens are going to have to pass the ball. Browns are going to be very pass heavy, trying to stay in this game where Baltimore is expected to win by 7.5 points. Dylan Gabriel never going to be a start. Quinshon Judkins a must start this week and the only must start on the Browns. Jerry Jeudy coming off a good week. Don't know if he's going to be able to replicate that. Going to be a flex start, though, just because he did have that good week. Cedric Tillman currently questionable. If he misses and Harold Fannin, who's currently questionable, misses, David Njoku is elevated from a sit to a must start just because of the target volume alone. Moving into the next matchup, we have a Kansas City Chiefs versus division rival Broncos. Sit both quarterbacks. And I know what you're thinking. Patrick Mahomes has been great this year. Patrick Mahomes is doing really well against bad defenses, and this is one of the best defenses out there. Patrick Mahomes is going to be a sit for me this week. Low-scoring game. Kansas is expected to win by only 3.5. I do think the Chiefs are going to be able to do a lot against the Broncos this week, but if Pacheco misses time, it's really just Rashee Rice who's going to be guarded by Pat Surtain and then Travis Kelce. That's pretty much the only offense that they've been working with right now, and I think it could be even lower than 43.5 for this week. J.K. Dobbins is questionable for this week, possibly going on IR. I don't think they're going to move him to IR. But if he misses this game, R.J. Harvey becomes a must start. If he plays, I think both are flex starts. Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin, because the Broncos haven't been able to get anything going in the offense recently, and they've just barely been winning games, they're both only going to be flex starts for me. Troy Franklin emerging kind of as the wide receiver 1 for the team. Moving into the Sunday night game, we have a fun matchup. I think it's going to be a shootout between the Lions and the Eagles. You're going to be starting majority of players on both teams. Flex starting David Montgomery just because he hasn't been the David Montgomery we've known and loved in the past. And then flex Jameson Williams just because he's very boom or bust right now. Lions are going to be very run heavy against the Eagles just because it's their safest form of offense, but they're, Dan Campbell, they're going to be doing a little bit of everything. Sam Laporte is questionable. If he does miss this game, I don't think he will. Then Jamison Williams will be a must start just because of the target volume. And Eagles are going to be very pass heavy. Lions don't have a very good secondary right now. And Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley are going to move away, I think, from the run game just because Saquon hasn't been that efficient. And they're going to try to pass the ball more. Hopefully some more targets go A.J. Brown's way than the 3 we saw last game. Devontae Smith hasn't really seen any volume variance, so Devontae Smith going to be a must start. And Dallas Goedert has a lot of volume or touchdown upside in every game. It's one or the other or both, so he's going to be a must start as well. Moving into the last matchup of the week, Monday Night Football, we have the Raiders versus the Cowboys. This is going to be a very high-scoring game, and it usually is when it's the Cowboys' defense. 50.5 is the implied team total. Dallas expected to win by 3.5 points. Raiders are going to be very pass-heavy in this game, and the Cowboys are going to start pass-heavy, and I think move over to the run game. Geno Smith is questionable for this game. He got hit pretty bad. Maybe even was a no-contact injury once he was hit. So if he misses this game, the wide receiver room becomes a complete mess. Tyler Lockett was Geno Smith's favorite target last game over Trey Tucker. I think they're both flex starts if Geno Smith plays just because it is the Dallas Cowboys defense. Dante Thornton and Jack Besh are both going to be sits. Brock Bowers and Genty are both going to be starts. Genty's going to be a start regardless of the Geno Smith situation, and so is Brock Bowers just because they're the main points of this offense. On the Cowboys side, start everybody but Kamonte Turpin. Everybody in their own respect has a reason to be started. Dak because it's going to be a high-scoring game and he's going to be responsible for all the receiving touchdowns. Javonte Williams because once they moved over to that run game, he's going to have a touchdown here or there. CD and Pickens are both Jamar and T. Higgins for the Dallas Cowboys, and Jake Ferguson, consistent tight end 1. So that's the last matchup. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys staying to the end. This is the Week 11 start and sit video for every single matchup. If you like this type of content, subscribe. I try to put one of these out every single week. If you have specific topics you want me to cover, please put those down in the comments and I'll try to make a video for that. Thank you.